Hello, welcome to the Kepware webinar for version 5.13 release. Thank you for all joining today. You saw a poll when you entered. Which country were you from? Looks like the majority of people are from North America and Europe, which makes sense because it's pretty late in Asia. A few housekeeping bullets before we get into it. This will be available on our YouTube channel. A recording of this will be available once this is over. Within 48 hours, you should get an email with a link to the recording, or you can just check our YouTube channel to see if it's been updated. Also, if you need more information than what we have here, and more information beyond this, we do have training at our offices that we offer once a month, and we recently confirmed our 2014 training schedule. So let us know if you would like to come here for training. And finally, you saw that poll question in the beginning. There will be some more poll questions throughout the webinar. Just a couple more to see where you guys are, see how I can tailor content in the future to you specifically. And also, we will post those poll questions publicly so you can see what everybody answered at the end. Okay, so let's get to it. Version 5.13, exciting stuff. What is new? We have some enhancements to v5.13. Those enhancements and new features include something called a device demand poll. So this is probably the most going to be the most widely used by all our users. It can be used with anything that we have, any channel or device or driver that we have within the server. Next is ODVA compliance for Untitled ControlLogix slave or Unsolicited Ethernet driver. We'll talk about what that means. And finally, enhancements for the oil and gas offering. So I'm going to go through each of these subjects individually, pause for questions at the end of each section, and then move on, and there will be a chance for Q&A at the very end of the webinar as well. So device demand poll, of course, started off with a poll question. Do you have any issues with regular polling or scanning data? So I'm going to go ahead and pop that poll up. Do you have any of these issues with regular polling or scanning data, meaning maybe you have a scan rate every 250 milliseconds or 500 milliseconds, but if there's a device that's failing or a lag in that scan, you have to wait for the data that you want. Or maybe you don't want your data all the time. You don't need it all the time. It's like a luggage carousel at an airport, right? It's not always running, so you only want it at certain times, only when that carousel is running. Maybe you're unsure or it's difficult for you to change the update rate at your client, and you want to just be able to get update immediately when you want it. Or maybe you don't have these issues, right? Constantly pulling data is working fine for you, or you use unsolicited updates and you don't pull at all. So anybody go ahead and answer these questions and leave it open for a couple more seconds. Okay, great. So got some good feedback here. It looks about a third of you are in the no, constant polling data is working for me, and then the other couple thirds in the yes, you do have the issues with the lag in the scan rate, and that you only want your data at certain times. So thanks for answering that poll. That's great. Okay, so demand poll can definitely help those people that are having issues with pulling data, as well as could be useful to people that are fine with traditional scanning but maybe want to try out these on-demand polls. So what you do is you have maybe your HMI panel here. You're going to write to this new demand poll tag. It's a system tag for the device that you're connected to. So you have your HMI screen, you walk up to it, you write a 1 to that demand poll tag, and you just get immediately an update. Now compare and contrast that to that constant 1-second poll, right? Putting a little extra drag on your network, giving you updates constantly, as opposed to just writing to that demand poll tag, to that binary value, and getting an update. So this could be useful in certain situations. For example, you're a SCADA operator and you want to just go up to a screen, touch object on that screen and just get an immediate update, or maybe you are operating that luggage carousel and you just want to be able to write a 1 and see what's going on with that line, because when people are coming off the plane, you're about to start up the carousel, right? Okay, so this is going to be pretty easy to demo. Pop out real quick here and get into my server. So first thing, I'm going to use the simulated channel here using the simulator driver in order to show you how this works with just a couple tags, a ramping tag, and a constant read-write tag. So now, if I go first into File, Project Properties, it's going to be the first place I want to check under ODBC compliance, because I have to have this little checkbox marked here for Ignore Group Update Rate, return data as soon as it is available. Now this is important. This is what you do in order to enable demand polling. And basically what you're saying is that instead of just polling every 5 seconds, if a demand poll comes in, you're going to override that rate and just send the data immediately. You still do that scan, so say you're doing a 5-second scan, and 2.3 seconds then you do a demand poll. Well then 2.7 seconds later, at that 5-second mark, you're still going to get your scan. So it doesn't interrupt your scan or pause your scan in any way. It just sends you that update as soon as it sees that demand poll come through. So I click Apply and Close, and then I'm going to go ahead and open my quick client here to see how this works. So I'm going to connect to my server, add a group with an update rate of 60 seconds, so a very slow update rate here, and then add a few items from my server. I add items from that channel 1, device 1, those 2 tags. Then I get into my device here, my device systems tags folder, and I see demand poll right on top. So that's the new tag that was added. I'm going to add one more, which is the scan mode tag, to see what scan mode I'm in. Okay, so there I am. I got an update once as soon as the client connected to the server. And I can see I'm using the client rate for my scan mode, and I have my demand poll. So if I write to the demand tag, remember I'm waiting for that 60-second scan to get data again, but if I want to override that rate and just get data right now, I can do that, and it updates. And you see that it updates this tag 1 because the data has changed for tag 1, and not tag 2 because the data stayed the same. So any tags where the values have changed, they'll increment and update. And for the tags that the data hasn't changed, they won't update, increment the update count or change the timestamp, okay? So that's pretty straightforward. Well now, maybe I want to take it to a whole nother level. Oh, and we have a comment here from Joe. This is useful for serial networks as well, where poll times may be in hours, but an operator wants an instant update. Yes, exactly, Joe. If you have a very slow scan, it's useful. Even if you have a fast scan but you just want a quick refresh, it can be helpful as well. Or you can even, if I get into device properties here, I go to my scan mode tag, and I see that right now that respects client specified scan rate. So the client says, you know, update every 60 seconds, or maybe I want to pump this up. I'm going to make it even faster at 1 second. And so I can see my 1 second update rate coming through, and I see that for my scan mode, I'm using the client specified rate. And I'm just getting those updates every 1 second. Well, maybe I don't want to respect that rate, and I don't want to scan at all. I just want to do demand poll only. We added that option in V513 in device property. So now if I click apply there, see my scan is stopped. I no longer get those 1 second updates. So if I go back in here, the only way for me to get updates now get data from the server is to write to this demand poll tag. And that's how I'm able to do it. Now, interesting thing here as well, notice that this snaps back to 0. Actually, you don't even see it toggle to 1 in the quick client. So I can just keep writing 1 as much as I want and keep getting those updates without having to toggle it back to 0. So that's nice. Okay, another question. I would like to connect demand poll to another channel, e.g. another PLC, and not the HMI. Is this possible? Yep, that's certainly possible. So if I get out of here, and that would be done with our advanced tags, we have something called a link tag. So my input might be can take anything that's on the server, so maybe my input is that demand pull tag and I can link it to something else and so on. So I can do that through the advanced tags for machine-to-machine linking. You can always do that through your client software as well, so that is certainly possible. And yes, that is a separate license. So you can contact our sales team. We'd be able to help you out with getting a license for that. Okay, great. Any other questions on device demand pull? This is all I had that I was going to share on this particular subject. So if you have any questions, now is a good time to ask. Okay, one question, do I need to allow client access to system tags to use this? Yes. So you need to give your client system tag access in order to write to the system tag device demand pull. Okay, great. Thanks for all your questions. Going to move on now to our second subject, which is the ODVA compliance for Allen Bradley ControlLogix slave Ethernet driver or unsolicited driver. It's a mouthful, right? So this driver, just give you a little background info, it was first released in version 5.8. And what it does is it allows the Allen Bradley PLC to basically update the server. So instead of the server constantly polling the device, this PLC can just send a burst of data or this unsolicited communication to the server directly. And that can be helpful because maybe in your situation, maybe you're an automobile maker and you have a line and you have different stations at that line, and when a car arrives at one of those stations, you want to be able to just get a burst of data and update all this ream of data that the car inputs to the PLC, and then be able to get that all at once and be done with it, not have to do that constant pull. So that's one situation where it might be useful. So that was version 5.8 when we released that driver, and now with this ODVA Conformance, we just continue our commitment to support open standards. So it's the Open DeviceNet Vendors Association that gave us this certificate of conformance. And it just prompted us to make some changes to this driver with as little user impact as possible. And in fact, it basically adds enhancements and helps you out as users, giving you greater flexibility. So now with this driver, we support connected and unconnected communications. Before, we only supported unconnected. Also, we support with the unconnected connected messaging all the ControlLogix firmware revisions. So it used to be just 5.15 and up, and now we support all of them, so that's great. We support identity requests. So if there's like an EIP scanner, ControlLogix scanner on the network, we can respond to a request and say, here's our identity, and pass them some information. And we also include in our install external data sheet or EDS file that you can import into the scanner. So just some greater flexibility there. Any questions on the ControlLogix information here? On what's changed or on how it works? Okay. Great. Yeah. So one question here, what's the difference between connected and unconnected messaging? Right, so connected means you basically open the path for communication, open the sockets, the TCP sockets, and keep those open for that messaging, so that's connected, which a lot of people who use Allen Bradley say that's faster since that line stays open. And then unconnected means you open that line of communication and then close it. And that's the basic difference. Some people say connected is faster. Yeah. Any other questions there? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on as long as there's no more questions for that. Okay. So now we'll talk about our enhancements for the oil and gas offering. Oh, and Travis, I see your question. I'll get to that later in the webinar. Thanks. So enhancements for our oil and gas offering include something, we actually released this type of functionality in v5.9, which these gas flow computers are out in the field, and they're central to delivering and tracking gas energy resources. So in V5.9, we added this audit trail functionality where you have these meters, you have these devices which are remote, and they're monitoring, maybe you have a pipeline from Canada to Mexico or a pipeline in Alaska, and these oil and gas companies are monitoring how much flow is going through these gas pipes or oil pipes. And they're storing that data off in these remote flow computers. And since these flow computers are really remote, they're called only every so often, so maybe once a day or a couple times a day. And when they're called, our server calls them, and then we get this huge, massive amount of archived data that's dumped into the server. So we need to make that server available to other users and available for analysis, so we have this EFM exporter plugin that outputs that data in certain formats, so proprietary CFX or PGAS formats, or the generic CSV. And then we store that data locally. So that was the functionality we had as of version 5.9. Now in version 5.13, we added, deals with the EFM exporter here, we added the capability for that exporter to export to ODBC-compliant databases. So what we do is basically connect to that database and either create new tables or write and append to existing tables that maybe you already have in that database. So if you're a server administrator, you can dump all this data in the database and thus give access to engineering, operations, or accounting people, maybe their departments, for analysis so they can look at it and use it. This is what the default tables look like. This is what will be created if you just leave our default settings and create those tables from scratch. So you have daily history, hourly history, alarms, and so on. And then this is what that mapping looks like. So this is what the data that might be contained in the table that pertains to what that meter is gathering as far as the gas flow. So demo for this, I'm not going to get into nitty-gritty details because, as I said before, this type of functionality is supported as of V5.9 and V5.10. And if you want more information on how to set up your devices to get this flow data into the server, you can access that on our YouTube channel or just ask for more information. So the only thing I'm going to show you here is that I have this device set up with a couple flow meters. And if I get into my EFM exporter, I already have a poll group set up for just on-demand polling to get the information from that meter. I'm connected to this Fisher Rock device, and now I'm going to create an exporter. So again, FlowCal, CSV, and PGAS, those were V5.9, and new to V5.13 is this database exporter. So first thing is that I want to configure my DSN. In my General tab, I want to launch Configure DSN from here because this launches the 32-bit data source administrator, which is necessary since we're a 32-bit application. I can select what I want: config, alarms, events, hourly, daily, history. I got a question here from David. Will a straightforward SQL Server connection be possible rather than through ODBC? So we manage these SQL connections through the ODBC connector. We support MS SQL Server, PostgreSQL, MySQL, and MS Access, those specific databases with that connection. So that's basically how it works, and hopefully that answers your question. So it does use that ODBC interface using those specific SQL servers. Okay. Now, here we are. We see this default mapping, and I have created a new table. So I could create a new table in my database, which is what I showed you in the slide, or log to an existing table. So if I selected that, this would populate with the existing column names that I have in that existing table, and I'd be able to map to them. And of course, I can add, edit, or delete any of these fields. So name what column I'm mapping to, pick list for what EFM attribute, select the data type, and so on. Okay, so that's it for the EFM exporter. Any questions there? Any further questions there? Okay, one question is, launching in 64-bit mode for that data source administrator will not work. Yeah, it will not work, so you do have to launch in 32-bit mode in order to configure this. Okay, good. So last piece of functionality here is Fisher-Rock user program. We added support for the Fisher-Rock Plus driver for these user programs. And it actually has no effect on the GUI or on the install or anything like that. There's no visual effect. Nothing's changed in the software, besides the fact that now we support these user programs. So in these Fisher-Rock Plus devices, you can program the device with user programs to do things like punch list control or cause and effect analysis. And these user programs expose data through something called user-defined points. So it's just this configurable address space in the device. And so now we can bring that data into the server. Before we couldn't, but now we can bring that customized program data into the server using auto tag generation. So you just ping the device, say, give me what you have, and we'll suck that back in. So any questions there? Okay, question from Mike. Will the ROC driver handle report by exception or cry out from the ROC device? I will have to give you more information on that, Mike, after we're done here. I am not completely sure on that. All right, great. Any further questions? So before we end here, of course, one more poll question. Will you use Kepware's new features? So please answer if you will use any of these. Multi-answer question. So will you use DeviceNet poll, ControlLogix slave Ethernet driver, EFM exporter, Fisher-Rock Plus user programs, or nothing or unsure? That's fine too. So answer that if you're going to use those. Okay, great. Yep, answers definitely match what I was expecting. Okay, good. I'm going to leave that open. So yeah, will you use DeviceNet poll, Ethernet driver, exporter for databases, ROC Plus driver, or none or unsure? A couple more seconds, leave that open. Okay, great. So pretty much what I expected, 60% of you said, yep, device man pool, that's definitely the most ubiquitous as far as you can use it with anything. AB ControlLogix slave Ethernet comes in at second. That's also a very popular driver. So good to know. Thank you for your feedback. Okay, any further questions on this? That will close out the presentation section of the webinar. Okay, getting some questions. How about data buffering? Now that, when you say data buffering, do you mean in the EFM exporter or just in general? Okay, yeah, in general. So data buffering is not supported for most of our drivers. It is supported for some of the drivers, like our IEC 61850 drivers, but for the majority of them, we do not support data buffering, just real-time data. Getting a question, is data buffering supported for the ControlLogix slave Ethernet driver? No, it is not. So yes, I mean, those are definitely things that we're investigating and that people comment here, data buffering would be extremely valuable. Yes, it would. So we do have a team of people who are evaluating those types of needs, and I will add your names to the list of people requesting that type of functionality. So that is something we're investigating, but it's not a feature yet. Okay, a question from Carlos. Would it be worth to update even if I'm not going to use the new features? Any existing feature more efficient or performance? Yes, Carlos, there's actually a ton of kind of housekeeping that goes on behind the scenes. In these webinars, I talk about all the marketable features that we've updated that's interesting, that we think would be interesting for our end users, but there's a ton of little tweaks that we do, patches and so on. So if you're on support, I definitely recommend updating because it's just free. And if it's easy for you to do, then I definitely update. It's fully backwards compatible, so you get all kinds of support gains. Okay, so here's a question. Is there a way to programmatically export the OPC tree? Yes, so I believe you're referring to this project tree here. So you can save this as an OPF, that's our proprietary format, or in XML and edit it, or yes, you can go File, Import, Export, CSV to export all this information here. Okay. Here's another question. Will the slides be available for independent review? Yes. Looking at my marketing email person across the way, and she's saying yes, I'll have those available for you via PDF. Okay, another question. Can I control a scan rate dynamically in KEPServer? Yes, yes. You can control it from the client dynamically in KEPServer. You can't control that in KEPServer directly. You need a client connected to control that scan rate. There are corner cases, and there is a place in KEPServer where you can force it to be a specific scan rate for an entire device, but typically it's always from the client. Can I give specific client names? So the names of clients, when I speak about clients, I'm talking about client software. So it's software that connects to our server. For example, would be Iconics or Wonderware or Inductive Automation. They make a product, a web-enabled product called Ignition. So those are all clients that connect to our software. And when I say client, I mean here's our server interface. And if I launch a quick client, that's our own piece of custom software connecting to the server to see the updates and see what's going on with the server. Yep, OBC systems.net is a client as well. Okay, question here from Travis for the device demand poll. Do these tags have to be static or can they be dynamic? Yep, they can be static or dynamic because all these settings happen on the device level. So device properties, scan mode is where you set it. That applies to any tags you would create for that device, whether they be static or dynamic. So that's a good question. Okay, great. It looks like that kind of rounds out all the questions I have in front of me. So again, will be available on our YouTube channel, this recording. And you know, if you want to come to our offices for training, you're always welcome. If you have further questions, you can email me directly, training@kepware.com. Sales or technical support, you can contact as well. And you can always download our free, fully functional, comes with all the bells and whistles, everything you want from our website for the demo. Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining. And yep, thank you. Yeah. And you know, signing off till next time. Thanks. Bye.